The title of today's story is Daniel and His Friends Face Trouble, Part 1. You can find the story in Daniel chapters 1 to 3. When King Nebuchadnezzar attacked Judah during Jehoiakim's reign, he took many captives back to Babylon with him. King Nebuchadnezzar commanded his servant Ashpenaz to bring some of the best and brightest Israelites to his palace. There, they would learn the language, culture, and customs of the Babylonians. They would study math, science, and astronomy, the study of the stars and planets, as well as the Babylonian pagan religion. King Nebuchadnezzar was training these young captives to be his servants and his advisors. Among those young Israelites were 4 friends: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. These 4 friends were either teenagers or in their early 20s. Imagine what these young men had been through. They saw their native homeland invaded. Many of their family and friends had probably been killed in the invasion. Then they were captured and taken from their homes and country to a foreign land where they did not know the language. They knew they would never see their loved ones or their homes ever again. They were forced to learn a new language, a pagan religion, and their enemy's culture so they could serve a king who did not know God. The Babylonians even gave them new names to make them forget about being Hebrew. Daniel's new name was Belshazzar. His friends' names were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. One day, the king's servant brought the young men a wonderful feast of fine meats and wine. It probably looked delicious. It was by order of the king. But there was a problem with the food. Daniel and his friends could not eat it without violating God's law. Perhaps the meat had been offered to idols and then cooked. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had to choose between obeying God's law or obeying a pagan king. After all, who would know? Their priests and family would probably never hear about this. They were probably dead. Besides, the other captives were eating as much as they pleased. So what did Daniel choose? He chose to obey God and not defile himself. Where did Daniel's purpose come from? It came from his heart. Daniel's choice to obey was based on his close relationship with God. It didn't matter who would know. It didn't matter who would care. It didn't matter what others were doing. God knew. He saw Daniel's choice and cared. The friends asked the king's servant to bring them only vegetables to eat and water to drink. The servant was afraid he would get in trouble, so Daniel suggested a test. The test was to give the 4 friends only vegetables and water for 10 days, and then compare them to the other younger men who were eating the king's meat. The servant agreed. For 10 days, Daniel and his friends ate nothing but vegetables at every meal, and they drank nothing but water. Daniel and his 3 friends went before King Nebuchadnezzar. The king found the 4 men to be exceptionally smart, healthy, and good-looking. He found them to be 10 times smarter than the king's own astronomers and wise men in his court. So Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego passed the test and continued in the king's court. One night, King Nebuchadnezzar had a disturbing dream. He had the dream again and again. It bothered him so much that he was losing sleep. King Nebuchadnezzar called in all his wise men and magicians. He commanded them to tell him about his dream. "I've had a dream that troubles me," the king said once his magicians and advisors stood before him. "Tell us your dream," the magicians and wise men replied, "and we will tell you what it means." But that's not what the king had in mind. "I've decided that unless you tell me the dream and its meaning, I'll have you killed and destroy your homes." Maybe the wise men were stunned. How could the king ask such an unreasonable thing? No one, no matter how smart he was, could know the king's private dreams. So the wise men tried again. "Please tell us what you dreamed," they said. "Then we can interpret it for you." "You're just trying to buy time," King Nebuchadnezzar replied. "First, tell me what I dreamed, and then tell me what it means." He then threatened to execute every wise man in the country if they couldn't tell the king his dream and interpret it. So the guards went looking for Daniel and his friends, because they were considered wise men too. The captain of the guard told Daniel what was going on, and Daniel asked the king to give him some time. Then Daniel went home and told his 3 friends what was happening. They went to God for help, and God answered Daniel's prayer in a night vision, and Daniel praised God for his mercy and wisdom. Now Daniel could save many lives, including his own and his friends. Daniel told the king that the interpretation was given to him by the God of heaven. Daniel proceeded to explain the king's dream. The king had dreamed about a large statue made out of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay. The dream was a message from God about the future of Babylon and other nations that would come to power in the future. God was revealing to Nebuchadnezzar and all who heard that he is in control of who rules on earth. Kings come and go because God is in control. The king bowed before Daniel and gave him many gifts. Now, what did King Nebuchadnezzar say about Daniel's God? He said the Lord God was a God above all gods, the Lord of kings and revealer of secrets. And that's part 1 of the story of Daniel and his friends. Tune in next week to listen to part 2.